There's been a change of plans, tighten up the clamps, we guarding the glass. I'm a Knickerbocker, we going man to man, no blood, no foul, sturdy in the zone. I leave it all on the line, die hard or go home. You see the body work, we shaking and baking. Was down by 20, but my spirit ain't breaking. Respect ain't automatic, you screaming out for the ref for a tech. You for a tech. I guard the garden, steel block swatted, bleed blue and orange. It's a die-hard thing, you know nothing about it. Live with the any star, 5-borough flavor. I made it rain, stole your cookies. See you later. Yeah, yeah.
Peace, guys. What's up? Got some technical difficulties with the intro there. But anyway, this your boy Eru, Die Hard Knicks podcast, and the place to be. Got a new camera going on, new lighting and stuff. Trying to test stuff out. You know, just trying to build things up a little bit. You know, since I've been starting this thing, man. So I'd like to welcome everybody that's on my channel, Die Hard Knicks podcast, and it's the primary channel that this show is going to be on. Will be nothing but Knicks. So, you know, I'll let it rock for maybe like another episode or two before I really get started. You know, just fully just going in on nothing but Knicks with this particular Die Hard Hour show. I will be doing other content on my main channel, you know, so tune in for that. So trying to work things out, you know, as time goes on, man. You know, like I saw I think CP from Nothing But Knicks. He posted like just like a video just telling content creators what they needed to do to be successful, and he said be consistent. You know what I'm saying? I never had a set day to do a podcast, but I used to be crazy consistent. For people that remember, if I was on vacation or something like that, I was putting out a video maybe like 3 times a week. You know what I'm saying? And the numbers went up. I was getting like 600 followers on my channel in the summertime alone. You know, within like 2 months, 600, 700, sometimes 800 followers in one off season. You know what I'm saying? So you know, being consistent, you know, does build the channel. But you know what it takes to break forward, you know, who knows, man. I mean, Sim has the formula, because he's actually the godfather, the one that started all this. So anyway, just throwing that stuff out there, man. Just saying what's up. So you know, I got a couple bones to pick, you know, mainly with certain fan bases. I know last time we talked a little bit about Detroit when I had Ramos, Giovanni Ramos on the channel last week. But you know, a lot of fan bases, you know, I don't know if it's social media or just the talking heads like myself, or just you know, places like Twitter and Threads and stuff like that, where people could just make their quick little comments, you know, and it's all over the world in a second. You know, and before this podcast stuff was happening, it was like blogging. So people will write blogs and then people will comment on blogs. Before the blogs, it was you know, message boards and stuff, you know. So I always shout out ultimateknicks.com. So shout out to ultimateknicks.com. If any of those guys that follow that website, you know, watching, you know, salute to you guys. You know, I got to meet the owners and hanged out with their family and all kind of stuff. But message boards was a big deal back in the days. But it was like confined spaces. Like, so people would have arguments on Ultimate Knicks that wouldn't trickle into the real GMs and other places that we used to go. The Knicks, I believe, used to have one on one of their things that wasn't very good. But you know, just back in the days, you know, the little conversations were, you know, compartmentalized. And like, let's say if you wanted to call into a show, you know, or radio show, people would call into the show, and then you would talk that way. Most of the stuff was really in your face. Like it would, like everybody talks about water coolers and barbershops and things of that nature. You know, in New York City, it could just be waiting on the subway platform or anywhere, you know, where you know, where people, you know, gather. It could be at the deli waiting for your sandwich or whatever. Just starts basketball debates and stuff. So the basketball debates never ended in like, oh, but you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you a clown and you a bitch. You know, people like to say the bitch word recently. I'm noticing. I'll point that out in a second. You know, when I start going into some of the comments here. But you know, it's just a weird phenomenon that's happening now, that the dialogue and stuff. People get so animated, they see it on their screen and TV, and you know, you don't really see it too much in person, but you know, it's just that people just are just copying the whole Stephen A. Smith thing. And you would think that by now, with all the content creators that are out there, that it would be less of that, because the whole purpose of a lot of us is to get away from Stephen A. Smith, because he was like you know, the face of all Knicks fans, quote unquote, on the media. But as soon as we popped in, you know, we gave a different outlook on things, you know, and it's just annoying that people are still going back, or like just going back to that regurgitated stuff that you see on the internet. even like the new commentators that pop up out the blue, they're coming in the game with that bullshit already. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I just think that that the content creators like myself and a few other people out there, they all is they're needed in today's media as and I think they're needed more today than ever because like I said, everything is all messed up, man. People feel they could just disrespect you on the internet because there's no repercussion. Barbershops and stuff like that, guys used to get in fights and stuff, but you get into fights because you're right there with the person. There's a certain respect, the lines you don't cross and stuff. But on the internet, you just don't really, people don't have that certain type of restraint or respect. I want to say, respect is lost in today's society, man. So it's kind of like annoying a little bit. But anyway, let's get into some basketball stuff. So I always try to start the pod with just giving you guys like a human take on things. To make sure I hit the right button. Shit. This live streaming stuff, man. You click the wrong button, bro, man. You'll be in trouble for the thing. But another thing about these websites is that at least if you get cut off, you can click a button and come right back on, man. So let me put this up in the stage. So I'm still messing around with these buttons here. StreamYard has changed a lot. So I'll be rocking with this, man, because I actually want to see my pretty face here. As you can see, I'm a little bit sweating a little bit, just trying to get myself here at this table to get started, man. But as you can see, you got some lighting, different lighting. Camera's definitely a little bit different. I'm hoping you guys can hear the audio and stuff, especially the soundboard. Can you hear the soundboard, guys? If you guys can hear the soundboard, let me know. Let me know if you hear all those sound effects and stuff like that, because I'm having issues with that. Anyway, let's get into some basketball stuff, man. I'll say like 2026 has been an up and down year. We try like I remember not too long ago this season we were talking about, does this team have an identity? Is Mike Brown the right coach? We shouldn't have traded Tom Thibodeau. Excuse me, shouldn't have got rid of Tom Thibodeau. Mike Brown can't make adjustments. He lost the team, all kind of stuff. Now it's becoming a thing where like Mike Brown is like a master tactician now, and he's like a master at making adjustments in game. It's just narratives that keep switching from game to game. That's also annoying too. It's the microwave takes and stuff. The people that make one take, they might be wrong the next game, so they're quiet. So then the other guys come in that are right on that take, and then the next game something else happens, and then everybody's quiet, and those guys that love that are particular about that take, they're jumping in, and that's just how we are right now. It's just really annoying, man. So let me take a look here. Let me get to the right spot here. So this is it. So the Knicks are 16 and 13 this year, starting from January 1st. We lost against OKC. We seem to our problems with teams right now is really the best ones. We lost against Cleveland. We lost against Detroit twice. Major teams like that. So the major question with the Knicks is like, can we beat the best teams? We have no problems really against other teams. We might lose one or two, but we normally handle business against teams that are not in that group. But we basically have lost like a greater majority of the games against some of the other teams. So against Cleveland, everybody's not afraid of Cleveland because Harden is always choked in the playoffs and stuff. But him adding to this Cleveland team is a little bit different. We got to see a different look from them. Because when they had the point guard that they had before, he's on the Clippers now. The Knicks were able to compete with the team because that particular player was hot and cold. And sometimes if he got hot, it would be tough for the Knicks to win. But if he wasn't on, then the Knicks would just wipe the floor with Cleveland. With Harden, Harden presents a problem because there's not too many people that can guard Harden. And then also too, Harden is going to pass it to the shooters, of course. But then you got Donovan Mitchell right there. So if Harden is doing his thing, this guy Donovan Mitchell is going to have the supreme confidence on the other side to take over. Especially if Harden is scoring, that's going to make Donovan Mitchell even more lethal from scoring because it's like that energy. Seeing another great player playing next to you, it gives you energy. You know what I'm saying? So these are different things that are concerning. Let's say like Boston now, Tatum is supposed to be coming back, so that's interesting. It has nothing to do with being afraid or crying or anything like that. Because I see a lot of other fans coming at the Knicks for that reason. The Knicks fans are always crying, this, that, and the other. I thought we weren't shit. I thought we were a bad team. I thought the Knicks were a terrible franchise. We lost the last 20 years. Remember that whole narrative? Now it's like the Knicks are good. So now Knicks fans are crybabies and we're bitches and all this other stuff. It's an irritating place to be right now as a Knicks fan, man. But yeah, man. So I mean, we're 40-22, third in the Eastern Conference. Point wise, we're 10th in the league. So that's basically like I want to say, one third in the top of the league, one third of the top. As far as opponents' field goals, points per game, I should say, we're fifth. So we're top five in the league as far as offensive points per game. The net rating and all this other stuff. All these little stats here are interesting when you're making talking points and stuff. But just watching the Knicks and just day to day and stuff like the Knicks are a really good offensive team. You know what I'm saying? Top, one third of the league is tells you right there that you're a good team. Defensively, fifth as far as points per game. That tells you right there where the Knicks are. So we're a very good team. So we usually beat teams by 6 points according to this. So we're in good shape as far as that is concerned. Let's take a look at the games per se. Let's say for like the last 20 games. I know I said that we were 16-12, excuse me, 16-13, since, the beginning of January. The last 20 games of that, we're actually are 15-6. So if you count basically most of January, if you count most of January, that really killed the record. So we're talking about one, and what's the other number? The other number was 13. So shit. So we're talking about one. And what is that? I'm not good at math. There's 1 in 7. Is that what that is? 1 in 6, something like that. I'm not really good at math. So outside of that little blip, when we were losing, we actually have been playing really well, 15 and 5 the last 20 games, counting the OKC game. So what was great in the beginning, we started that 20 game winning streak, that 20 game period with an 8-game winning streak. So we went from that little period when we were losing, and everybody the sky was falling. Oh, fire Mike Brown and stuff. And then we went 8 straight games. And then now all of a sudden, everything is back to normal now. So people can make the argument that we play Brooklyn is not really that good. Sacramento's not good. Toronto is who they are. Portland, the Lakers are kind of funky. Washington Wizards and stuff. Whatever you want to say. But in order to be a good team, you have to win these games. So the pressure is on to win them. You know what I'm saying? So we did win 8 straight. It starts getting, sketchy here. Like I said, when we played teams like Denver, we did beat Boston. Like I said, Boston, we might have their number. Other than Jaylen Brown, and maybe Pritchard and stuff like that, the rest of the team we're able to defend. So whether Pritchard is playing well or Jaylen Brown, if they're playing well, I would say in like a 7-game series, we should be able to handle Boston pretty easily. With as they're currently constituted, with them getting Tatum, if Tatum is back, can get some rhythm, then we can talk there. But we already proved that we can beat them. We beat them last year. Same thing with Detroit. Detroit, they've been mauling us though, beating us by damn near 40 points. Some nights, as you see, this is not the last game, but one of the games we only scored 80 points. They scored 118, we scored 80. So they're beating us by 40. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like they're just beating us like to say like Denver might squeeze out a win, or let's say like Indiana beat us a couple games after the first Detroit game. They beat us in overtime, and then eventually won by 3. So that's an anomaly. You know what I'm saying? A bad team, they might come in there and sneak and win us, and beat us, due to matchups and whatever else have you. You know what I'm saying? But a team like Detroit beating us by 40, that shows like a real problem with the Knicks as far as with how they're put together and stuff. The team's identity, who we have in a rotation, how we go about winning games and stuff. So just going down to Detroit, like I said, we lost to Detroit again. In this game, we lost by 25. So we lost by near 40, in the first one, 30 something, and then we lost by 20 in the next one. We did manage to beat Houston. Say like the difference between like a team like Detroit and like Houston, they're very similar, I guess. In the beginning of the season, everybody was afraid of Houston. But the Knicks really match up with Houston better because of the way that the Knicks drive and spread for the 3-point shots and stuff. We're actually trying to move up and down. And, our identity, I would say right now in the beginning of the conversation is really Wingstop. As long as our perimeter defense is doing what they're supposed to do, communicating on the perimeter and stuff like that. And as long as, Karl Anthony Towns is paying attention for the most part, If as long as he's rebounding the basketball and Mitchell Robinson can come in and do his thing, then the Knicks defense is fantastic, you know. So that goes saying without that. So I mean, competing against a team like Houston, we're able to compete with them because they have guys like, you know, the center that they have. What was his name? Sagoon. They have Sagoon there, so they do have their little holes that the Knicks can really disrupt them, and the stuff that they're trying to do. There goes Cleveland again. Cleveland, it wasn't a close game. The score is closer than what the game seemed like when we played. But it's just the pace, and it just the Knicks not able to get over the hump as far as like the way that they were scoring in the backcourt, compared to the front court and stuff. The front court, we all know that the Cleveland's front court is a bunch of pussies. On paper, it looks good, Twin Towers type effect there, but the Knicks have their own, version of that. Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns and stuff. They're able to match that matchup if we wanted to, But just the real power that the Knicks have is their perimeter defense. That's where we lay our hats at. But going against their backcourt is definitely going to be an issue for us, going forward if we happen to play them in the playoffs. Teams like Milwaukee, we're going to beat them now because they're a team that's like in flux. You want to talk about Giannis. We talked a lot this year about trading for Giannis, especially around the trade deadline and stuff. I'm not sure if that's going to be in our cards going forward, because I kind of like what the Knicks are doing. But if the Knicks are going to do something like that, it's going to be a major trade, and that's like something that we're going to be talking like crazy as soon as the last loss of the season happens. We're going to definitely be on that. San Antonio has been a fun matchup this year. As far as head to head, we played them well, similar to say like a Houston or whatever. There's just the matchups are really well, and then I like the competitiveness of it. Is that San Antonio? I'll use that as a contrast to say like a team like OKC. Where San Antonio, they play hard, they play tough and stuff like that, but they're not playing dirty, bro. Like the Knicks themselves, we play hard and tough too, but we're not a physical team. We play strong defense. We get on guys, as far as defense, and we have a game plan after we make a turnover or something like that. But we're doing that from being active. We're not necessarily pushing and tripping guys and stuff like that, like OKC does. San Antonio is matching our energy. They're coming through with the bigger guards and bigger forwards. The perimeter players, so they're matching us with the wing stop thing, so I think Wemby's trying to figure it out, with our defense. Our defense was disrupting him a lot, so I think they're trying to figure it out. But it's been a fun, battle between that team. We beat them in the cup, and then they beat us right after, and then we beat them the last game. So, that's been fun. I think that's what makes the NBA. These little fun games that we have, like cross country matchups like San Antonio. And in the Knicks, for somebody like me, an older fan, I remember us being in the finals and stuff. So there's like a little rivalry in the background, for the older fans. And for the newer fans, you get to see like these new guys coming up, and our Knicks are playing well. So it's just fun to see that matchup. So that's all dope. What I'm saying? So it's been a good stretch, man. You can't really get mad at 15-5. So what is the real Knicks though right now? Are the Knicks just catching fire at this particular time? Being March right now, did the Knicks already play their best basketball of the season? We did win 8 straight games. We've been back and forth the last couple of weeks, basically beating all the teams we're supposed to beat, basically, and then struggling still with the stronger teams. So what are the real Knicks right now? Like I said, I mentioned their identity is the wing stop. But in order to win games, you're going to have to compete physically. With a lot of these teams, playoffs is a whole different story. I see a lot of fans saying that, in comments and stuff like that. Playoffs is a different story. Can you just flip a switch and start playing a certain way? Yeah, you probably could. You're going to start to push the envelope as far as physicality and stuff like that. But OKC right now in the regular season, they're getting really away with a lot of pushing. Tripping. Shout out to Dort, man. I was trying to get some videos and images of Dort doing this thing, but because Dort's been doing some stuff, man. He didn't really do nothing too much to the Knicks, really. Just a lot of pushing the show. They're allowing to touch players, touch them with their hands and squeeze players and stuff. And it's just interesting how the NBA does that. So right now, OKC is the darling of the NBA. They want OKC to be that mega franchise that wins every year, because the NBA is attracted to that. Back when Jordan was winning, back when Magic and Bird was winning, they both of those teams seem to get the whistles to get them to where they need to go. Say Dallas was good back when Magic played, but they always beat Dallas every single year. On the opposite side, say like Boston, they would play against Philly or whatever, and it was always like a back and forth thing. But Boston will always get the upper hand. Same thing with the Knicks too. Knicks were playing with them. They always would get the upper hand. Same with Chicago. Chicago was being pushed as the team. So every time there was like a 50-50 play, Chicago would 9 times out of 10 get that play. And of course, they had the best closer ever in the league history, and that's Michael Jordan. So he was able to seal a deal for them every single time. So right now, OKC is that team. Why is that? They got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He's looked at to be like this generation's Michael Jordan. But he's just not Michael Jordan. That tells you right there. Like, regardless of how many points Shea could score and the way that he scores, and let's say they won the championship last year, they might win again this year. You know what I'm saying? But just the way that he plays, it's just not. It's not the same as Michael Jordan. But they're trying to get that face of the NBA like that. The NBA is more inclined to push these international stars, and it's evident. The international players are better right now. It seems like that. But it seems like they really are pushing for that particular person. Giannis was that guy, but his energy, I want to say, is not really necessarily marketable the way that he is. And the Milwaukee Bucks hasn't really done a good job of building around him. But OKC, with I guess his name was Presti, is that his name with OKC? I'm not sure who their GM is or whatever offhand. That's for you guys to correct me, man. But they have all these draft picks and stuff, so they can start funneling in, like a freaking, like a Boston Celtics type of thing. When Boston Celtics back in the days used to win every year, they won 11 championships. OKC, with these draft picks that they have and the ability to make moves, and they don't really have a lot of crazy salary and stuff like that, they could potentially start pumping out, championships and just like legendary seasons and stuff, man. So, it's just interesting how this thing is going here, man. But as I'm trying to find a way not to be, not to be like not necessarily sound bitter or anything like that, or sound like I'm crying or anything like that. But this is, I think, our reaction from all fans here during that OKC game, because it wasn't just that particular play why Mike Brown was mad. Of course, there was plenty of plays throughout the course of that game that were questionable. Every 50-50 call was going towards OKC. Every time the Knicks pushed. So that's one thing about our Knicks. Our Knicks don't never give up. Even back from when Tom Thibodeau coached, we just don't give up. You know what I'm saying? So we're always in games, able to score, able to get on defense, and you can never count us out. Even with this Mike Brown team, man, it's just frustrating to just see the stuff that was happening. So, I love this picture, man. This picture, I think I might frame it. You know what I'm saying? So this is him yelling at the referee. He got way in the referee's face, man. And Mike Brown, he's an older man. He's 54 years old. I think his birthday was yesterday, right? Yesterday or either today. He's turned 54. He looks great, man. He looked worse when he was like in his 40s and his 30s. He didn't look as in good a shape as he is now, man. So God bless him, with the success that he's had and stuff like that, able to get himself in good shape. So he looks fantastic, man. But I got to cue it up, man. So I want to see him in live action, him moving around here real quick. Let's take a look at that.
Fans getting restless here. That's the third Knicks foul, and there is a technical foul on Mike Brown. It's being held back by Rick Brunson.
Yeah, Fat Joe also there.
He did not pick up a tee, but Mike Brown did. It's such a big call. If that's a charge, it's 3 on SGA.
I know. And look at Brown hyperventilating.
Yeah, man. That play is controversial. It could have went either way or whatever, but just that reaction is gold. Shout out to Clyde, shouting out Fat Joe. Fat Joe's another guy, man. He's basically like a living avatar, the type of fan that was fans of the Knicks back in the days or whatever, and then it don't really come out until the Knicks start winning. Now he's like a front runner fan now. So, it's interesting, man. Shout out to Spike Lee. Spike Lee was sitting on the sideline and maybe a few rows back, when the Knicks were losing. You know what I'm saying? So now we're winning, and now look at who's out there, with the furs and all that stuff that goes along with that. So it's a good place to be, the Knicks, right now. Let me just point this out. This is my Threads page, you know. So if anybody wants to interact with me in that way, you know, you can go on Threads. I'm on Twitter also, but I'm kind of like weeding myself off of Twitter. I use Twitter for media purposes because you're allowed to play videos on Twitter and they don't really mess with you. You do it on YouTube, even for like 2-3 seconds, and they're gonna put a strike on your channel, you know. But for some reason, Twitter, that you don't really get that same effect, you know. So that's why I'll still use Twitter for media and stuff. But as far as chatting with fans and stuff, you know, you can find me on Threads. Right now, I got 594 followers. You know, I feel like you know, I'm starting to get a lot more, you know, interactions from certain fan bases, depending on who the Knicks play for the night. So I just want to point out to this here. See, this particular post has 6 comments on it. As you can see, got the crying, you know, memes and stuff. You know, I'm going back and forth with some of the guys. But as I was getting a lot of notifications. But you know, shout out to Threads. The way that they do things over here is that they block out a lot of the cursing, a lot of the bullying too, quote unquote bullying. They block it out automatically on Threads. So you might see the notification and you could read what they said, but then you go onto the site to comment and it's gone. You know, because the way that their you know, AI systems or whatever, they actually block out a lot of these comments and stuff. So shout out to these guys. This guy RJ Wilkins, 25 was that 253? It's probably not even a real person. You know, like this picture that he has here doesn't even look real. Looks like a little kid. He's still got his middle finger up or whatever. He looks like a little kid. He might not, this person might not even be a real person, like I said. But he was one of the guys that was calling me a bitch on here, you know, saying, "Oh, the Knicks fans a bunch of bitches, you a bitch," all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I pointed out that I saw the comments. I made like a little comment there. So my thing is, right, you know, they're saying that the Knicks are crying because of the way that OKC is playing. And then, you know, the Knicks are crying because, you know, OKC is doing whatever. But my thing is, right, you know, like I said, I'm an older fan, man. So I just look at stuff differently, man. I look at Patrick Ewing, I look at Oakley, you know, I look at X-Men. You know what I'm saying? You know, the Knicks played defense back in the days. We played tough, we play hard, but you know, we were dirty, bro. You know, especially this group, you know, Oakley and X-Men on either side of the ball. We were dirty. We were a dirty team, you know, and we knew it at the time that we were dirty. We loved it. You know, we were battling against Detroit. We did it better than Detroit, I want to say. I think Detroit did it like suckers the way that OKC is doing it. But I think the Knicks, we did it like men. You know, we played defense like men. You know, we threw guys to the floor. There was no layup rules and stuff like that. You know, but we threw guys on the floor and we did it with our chests. Then not just sneakily and doing stuff like that. We didn't play like that. You know, shout out to Xavier McDaniel, this famous picture of him going nose to nose with Michael Jordan. You know, yeah, there was a lot of intimidation going on, you know, a lot of curse, probably, you know, a lot of choice words in between, you know, just, but that's men's stuff, like face to face, like Xavier's talking to Jordan right in his face, and Jordan's letting Xavier know that he's not taking it, and he, you know, he's gonna stand like a man on 2 feet, you know, and confront them and beat the Knicks, and they actually beat the Knicks, you know. So this is a different era, I guess, you know, a different kind of man at this point in time. You know what I'm saying? Even David Stern compared to, you know, the commissioner that we have now, you know, is just two different men, you know. Going further, say a guy like this, Greg Anthony. Greg Anthony was a dirty player, man. The only thing that he's really known for are fights. The most famous fight is that he was injured and we were playing against Phoenix. I believe we were on the road, and Kevin Johnson did something. You know, the Knicks, it was a little like a touchy feely game. And you know, I forgot what happened exactly. I don't know if you guys can mention that in the comments though. But Greg Anthony popped up on the court with a rayon shirt. You know, remember the rayon shirts? They were like the flower shirts that were made out of rayon. You know, that we used to wear back in the 90s. He pops up on the court and he started throwing balls with Kevin Johnson. You know what I'm saying? So that's all he was good for. Every time you had Greg Anthony out there, you weren't gonna see good basketball. The guy couldn't shoot. He couldn't create his own shot. He wasn't a good passer. He couldn't dribble. This guy was a bum. You know, Greg Anthony was a straight bum. The way that he talks, he's a good commentator, good you know, media guy. I love it when he covers games. He does a really good job in the summer league and stuff like that. So that's his thing, talking the game. You know, just a really good broadcaster, man. But basketball player, man, this guy was not a good basketball player. You know, shout out to the way he played, maybe, and you know, he played for the Vancouver Grizzlies for a little while. He was able to start for them, you know, because the Knicks gave him up in like the, you know, dispersal draft. And he might have played, you know, decently in Portland off the bench. You know what I'm saying? If you want to call that decently, but as a Knick, man, this guy was just a straight goon, just out there just to hurt people and stuff. And that's what he was there for. Shout out to Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller had to push him to the ground, to get that 8-point play, because Greg Anthony was on his ass. You know what I mean? So, but the thing I'm trying to say here is that like we stood on business. We knew that we had a bunch of savages, on the team, a bunch of crazy maniacs that we would throw you to the floor, and we were trying to hurt you. And there was no like pulling punches and no mistake about it. We were trying to hurt you, But this Oklahoma City team here, they're trying to hurt you, bro. They're trying to hurt you, and they're trying to pretend like they ain't doing nothing. So anyway, just this particular play, this is not a defensive play, but this is what Mike Brown was upset about. So I don't have I'm not gonna put the audio up, but you can just watch it here. Just watching other content creators talk about it, they were saying that that Brunson was in, he wasn't in the restricted area. That's why he didn't get the call. But my thing is, right, let's say if we're at a midcourt, and like a guy's flying up the court or whatever, just bogarting up the court, and you're in position, you can draw a charge at midcourt and halfway up the court. You can get a charge at other parts of the other court. It's not just about being in the paint and stuff. It's a restricted area in the box, whatever they want to say the restricted area. That's for on drives, where if you're within that circle there, that is automatic charging foul. You know what I'm saying? Or automatic blocking foul, whatever the rule is. But there's another rule when according to like the box, it's like a box that's right underneath the dotted line. You can see that little line underneath the dotted line, and that's where the box is. And there's supposed to be some kind of rule that says that it's always going to be a offensive, a blocking foul, because they say that that you have to let the offensive player get a chance to move. So my thing is like, so how do you play defense then? If you're not allowed to let the player move, then how do you play defense? So you're just supposed to let the player just go to the basket untouched? You know what I'm saying? So all this whole time, Karl Anthony Towns has been playing great defense because he's following the rules. You're not supposed to touch the guy, let him drive in and score a layup, right? So there's another play against OKC where basically the same thing happened. And shout out to a lot of content creators. I'm gonna shout out to Legion. Legion's been posting some good stuff on Twitter that I've noticed that nobody's commenting on. You know what I'm saying? Which I don't understand. Legion has been around, been on Twitter a lot, and his views on his comments are low compared to other jackasses that don't have the platform that Legion has. Anyway, so shout out to Legion. Legion brought up the OG Anunoby play. Was it basically the same play where OG drove to the basket and one of the OKC players slid in, but they were actually still moving when he was making the drive to the basket. Talking about OG, the OG was driving to the basket, and the defender for OKC was still moving, and then OKC challenged it because it was a blocking foul at first, but OKC challenged it and then they overturned it as a charging foul. You know what I'm saying? So that's the point what I'm trying to say. The NBA is really trying hard for OKC to be successful. Every 50-50 ball, every challenge and stuff like that is going to go in their favor, especially if they're in danger of losing a lead or momentum changes and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So this is where we are. Do I like it? No. Am I complaining? No. You know what I'm saying? Am I going to be a bitch about it? No. But it just is what it is. Right now, OKC is that team that they're just going to get that preferential treatment. It's just something that we're going to have to deal with going forward. And shout out to Indiana because I remember there were a couple plays in Indiana. Shout out to Obi Toppin. I think Obi Toppin got clobbered in one of those Oakley, Mason, Xavier McDaniel fouls where they triple teamed him and took him out, almost took him out the game. You know what I'm saying? So OKC is playing dirty, man. So what I would like to see, the same way that the Detroit Pistons back in the days, the bad boys, they were hurting everybody. But say Boston kept fighting back. Boston was fighting back. You know what I'm saying? There's a famous thing. Was it yeah, it was, I think it was the Lakers. The Lakers were playing against Detroit. And I think Rambis got creamed or whatever. So, Rambis jumped up and he was fighting back. These guys were fighting back. You know what I'm saying? So, and then eventually the Knicks took over the bad boy image. Shout out to Miami Heat. Shout out to the Davis boys in Indiana. They took over, what Detroit, started off. So that makes me happy. So thinking about that, the bad boy era, it turned into the Knicks, Indiana, Miami, turned into that era. So I'm hoping that from OKC that the rest of the teams start doing the same thing, getting their goons and start playing tougher defense. That way we can get back to the competitiveness where guys are like, if you're gonna slam me to the ground and you're doing that to me and you're tripping me and stuff like that, then we're gonna do the same thing to you on the opposite end. And then from a fan standpoint, I just think that that's like, a kid in the candy store, man, as far as the competition. Because the 3-point shot is destroying the game. Right now the game you could say the game evolved. Shout out to Jovan Ramos. He mentioned that in the last podcast that the NBA basketball game has evolved. Not necessarily in a good way, but they have evolved. You know what I'm saying? So now we're like a 3-point shooting game. There's not really a lot of in between stuff going on. Everything is just like 3-point shot, drive, kick, 3-point shot. Guys are passing up layups to kick it back out to get the three. It just is what it is. Transition threes, like crazy, man. It is what it is. But it's not necessarily a fun game to watch or an exciting game to watch. The points are up. LeBron James talking about, today's game, the pace and, we need breaks and we need to take FMLA and other shit just to get our rest and stuff. The NBA is fighting the players, saying, finding them, for taking unnecessary days off and that type of thing. So it's a mess. So what will fix that is basically the way that OKC plays. OKC plays dirty and they want, as you can see there, guys are trying to get rebounds and you see the team rebounds where OKC's jumping on teams' backs and stuff, the way that the Knicks used to do back in the days. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping that this becomes contagious, because if we can get guys to start, really banging on each other, and let it get back to the way that it was, and maybe that'll be better for us, better for fans in general. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm really, really excited about as far as as far as that's concerned, So yeah, man, I've been talking a lot, man. I could talk a lot. I did this podcast when me and Sim talked about it. We were trying to get you guys involved into the show and stuff. So let me get this together. I'm trying not to make too many of these things here, but usually the link is going to be the same. So this is a link here, man. So if anybody wants to pop in, you could pop in by using this link that I just posted. You can see it on the Die Hard Knicks channel. You can see it on the Nothing But Knicks channel. Click the link, and I'll see you pop up on the bottom. And if you want to talk for a little while, just say what's up. So I've talked about a lot here. I talked about the Knicks winning this year. Like I said, we were 16-13, for up until this point, but we really are 15-5 starting from 20 games ago, 15-5. So 15-5, that's telling us a lot. The Knicks are playing some of their best basketball, of the season right now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm also talking about identity. The Knicks are basically Wingstop. We're a really good defensive team as far as perimeter help and stuff like that. But in my opinion, just basically by how OKC plays, getting into rebounds, getting to all these 50-50 balls and stuff. They're doing it with physical play. Their coach, I can't even tell you his name, but he doesn't get any credit as far as Mike Brown. He's like always being ran through the coals and stuff. But that OKC coach, I can't call him by name. I can't even describe him at the moment. You know what I'm saying? What he looks like. I know he's a white guy. I know he's a white guy. But as far as like their game plan like that, like he's been a great coach, man. He's doing what he's supposed to do. But Mike Brown's doing his thing there. But we would definitely need more bigs. I'm glad that the young boy Diawara is playing really well right now. So but he's a rookie. He's coming up. But it would have been nice for the Knicks to pick up another big. I see guys were complaining that we needed another center, but I think we needed another a wing player that can start for us and play strong power forward. So these are conversations that we're gonna have as time goes on. Because Mikal Bridges is good. Mikal Bridges is good. But we actually could use somebody that can create their own shot. Shout out to Josh Hart. A lot of people are getting on Josh Hart about the way that he plays and stuff. He's not necessarily an offensive player, but he does rebound and he gets to those loose balls, really well. So as far as like if other guys were rebounding well, Shout out to Julia. Shout out to Hartenstein. When we had those guys, even DiVincenzo, we had other guys on the ball getting rebounds. Then it leaves Josh Hart to get those tough rebounds. You know, I remember he was famously quoted to say that he gets rebounds that break teams. He does, you know, but it only works if other players are getting doing their job, boxing out and stuff. Then Josh Hart can get to that rebound. You know, if everybody's boxing out and doing what they're supposed to do, because they can get the rebound. You know, Josh Hart is going to make sure that he gets to that tough rebound that you need when, you know, in order to win the game. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's all good stuff here. So, like I said, there is a link there if anybody wanted to pop in and ask me a question or talk about some of the stuff that we've been talking about here. Even talking about some old style Knicks stuff, man. You know, the way that we used to play and whatever. You know, not saying that just get this style of play was the best. You know, because if you want to talk about points during this era, they really put up a lot of points. So if you look at it, guys like Ewing was averaging maybe 22, 24. You know, in this era with the pace and stuff, you know, how much points would Ewing have been averaging? Shit. You know, because you want to talk about the 3-point shot, Ewing could shoot. He was shooting it way out to 20, you know, 20-something feet. You know, during the what do you call the 3-point era when they had Mike. I'm thinking of Mike Fratello, but it's the guy from St. John's right now. He was the coach. They were shooting a lot of threes at the time, you know, and he was shooting threes in the playoffs. He famously caught a rebound and shot a 3-point shot in the corner to help beat Boston that year. You know, so you know, Ewing could shoot threes. So if he was in this era, he would be shooting threes the way the rest of these guys are. You know, even Oakley shot the long jump shot. He probably would have been shooting threes. You know, it's interesting to talk about it like that. You know, but it's just interesting, man. So let me get to some comments. You know, I see you guys are commenting and stuff. So I just want to make sure I say what's up to you guys. I see Ralph, my man Raphael is here again. Shout out to Ralph, man. You know, Ralph is an interesting fellow. He got his content on YouTube and stuff, man. He actually was on my channel, the Die Hard Knicks channel. We was trying to do some content, man. We couldn't get it to work, man. I was getting on you know, Ralph live on the air when it came to that stuff, man. But you know, it is what it is, man. You got to move at your own pace and do what's comfortable for you. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, so shout out to you. It's the lettuce, baby. It's my guy here that does the theme song for this particular show. So shout out to him. You got Just Knicks in the place saluting. What else we got here? Kareem Grant in the place to be. Yeah, so lettuce says the audio was good. Yeah, man, just making sure that all this other stuff is good too, man. Because I would like to start using, you know, some of these other little things that I have.
Mega.
You know? Hebrew is Yes, I'm not sure if you guys can hear all that stuff, man. I got so many soundboards. I would like to use it more, but when I do the playback, you know, some of the stuff sometimes it's not playing. So I gotta figure that out. Maybe it was my soundboard. I gotta figure something out here. So Alfredo says we need Charlie Ward back. Yeah, man. Charlie Ward famously, you know, got in that fight with PJ Brown, which we probably could have beat Jordan that year, you know, but you know, it's crying over spilled milk there. You know, so you know, that's that crying thing is getting to me because, you know, like my younger self, like right now, I'm in my 40s, right? I'm in my mid 40s, mid to late 40s right now. And you know, right now I'm a different person right now. You know, compared to, you know, everybody knows I started doing YouTube in 2018, right? So you know, in 2018, I would tell you, you know, I would invite you to the hot dog stand. Come to the hot dog stand. I would tell you directly, you know, and then I might possibly wait for you at the hot dog stand back in 2018. You know what I'm saying? So a couple things, you know, during that time, but you know, during that time frame, you want to talk about 8 years now that's passed. You know, people change, man. So I'm trying not to do that. You know, the OG thing, I'm with it now. You know, at first I didn't really like it, but now I just see how young boys move, and I see a lot of my old self in people. You know what I'm saying? So you know, gotta be the OG. Somebody gotta have some you know, some common sense and some restraint or whatever to teach other people how to conduct themselves as a fan and stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's not always about, you know, frankfurters and tartar sauce and, you know, and not tartar sauce, freaking sauerkraut and relish and stuff like that. It's not always about, you know, the buns and the freaking hot dog. You know what I'm saying? It's not always about that. You know, it's sometimes you just got to let things go, especially young guys that feel they need to be that way. You know what I'm saying? Maybe just fall back because let them live a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Let them do what they need to do to get to where they got to go. You know what I'm saying? You don't got to do nothing to them. You know what I'm saying? Just speaking in general. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Chris Gotti. He says, refs allow OKC to be physical and handsy, but God forbid the Knicks do it. No, yes, that's the thing. That's the double standard. So that's the issue with the NBA is that right now it's in the infancy where only one team can do it at this point now. Because we play some tough teams. We played Denver. Denver's a decent team. We played teams like Boston, teams like Cleveland. Who's another nemesis of the Knicks, right now? On the Eastern Conference. Indiana, the Indiana plays us tough, physical and stuff like that, but they never play dirty. To me, I don't think Indiana played dirty. We played them tough. South to San Antonio. San Antonio keeps giving us like great reviews and stuff, about the way that we play, giving us their respect. You know what I'm saying? So I just think OKC is the only team doing it right now. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, I'm looking at it, in a good way that possibly that we can copy this. The rest of the league can start copying this style of play. And then, like I said, like real people that actually play basketball or have played basketball or just remember the good old days, quote unquote, how we used to be, playing in the parks where everybody used to pull up to the park and call Knicks, where you couldn't play unless you could beat the old guys on the court. That's what made everybody tough. That's what taught me the game. Coming to the basketball court, and eventually, yo, shorty, you want to play? You know what I'm saying? Because they could see you on the side, doing your thing. Maybe playing 21. We used to play Utah in Brooklyn. See you playing Utah and say, "Oh, that kid's busting his ass." Yo, sure, you want to play? Yeah, we need an extra one. And if they call you over to play, if you don't do well, then they ain't gonna call you again. But if you do decent, they throw you on the floor, they do their thing, but you keep playing, you don't call fouls and and whatever, you don't take it personal. They're gonna keep calling you, and that's how you get better. Before you know it, you're a regular on the court. You know what I'm saying? And the next shorty is gonna come up and if they can handle it. You know what I'm saying? So that's how we were brought up back in the days. It's a little different right now. Chris Gotti also says SGA is a free throw merchant. That's that goes without saying. Foul beta. Even Mike Brown said he knows how to. So Brunson was getting a lot of flack with that, especially after that Detroit series. They're saying that Brunson was baiting fouls and stuff. Brunson said it best himself that he played basketball in such a way that he's playing within the rules. All he's doing is manipulating the rules. So I never seen Brunson shove guys. I never seen Brunson grab guys and push and pull them. I never seen him just stand there and jump into people and stuff like that. And but as far as SGA, I see that every single time he plays. Like sometimes he'll make a crossover, he'll grab the guy by a wrist and pull him, as he's crossing over. And I'm looking at it like even a play last night, I think he shot a jump shot. There was no contact, but he kicks his foot forward, and then it ends up calling a foul on the Knicks. So I mean, it's crazy. He's getting like literally Jordan rules, and it's like we're gonna call it the SGA rule soon. The way that things have been going on. It was 5 against 8. Chris Gotti, shout out to Chris Gotti, man. I'll call Chris Gotti so far the MVP of the episode, man. So hopefully you guys heard the soundboard, man. If you guys can hear the soundboard, let me know if you can hear the soundboard. We got Kareem in the house again. Yeah, we're not a dirty team. We're not a dirty team. We play tough. We play we might play physical, but Detroit was they want to talk about bitching. The Detroit fans and players were bitching about the Knicks physicality. It wasn't necessarily physicality, it's just the Knicks were playing hard. The Knicks were playing hard. They were beating them to the loose balls, and we were boxing out, we were beating them to the 50-50s. We weren't just getting it from the referees, and they were complaining a lot. You know what I'm saying? So they lost that series. We did beat them, but they lost the series because they had opportunities to beat us. They just couldn't hold leads and stuff. So you can't complain about the refs and complain how the Knicks are playing when you had leads. They had like 15-point leads against the Knicks last year in the playoffs. Talking about Detroit, and then they got the nerve to complain that the Knicks are doing this to them. Like, whatever, bro, man. Something's up with that. Yeah, man. So Kareem, he says you got to have a therapy session after Twitter. Yeah, man. Some of them guys on Twitter, man, they get too crazy, man. But like I said, you look at the views on these posts. There's a lot of suckers on Twitter, man. Quite a few. So many suckers on Twitter. There's a group of guys there. They kind of clicked up. You know what I'm saying? So they're meeting each other in real life and stuff and becoming friends and stuff. So I think that's dope. Because like I said, I mentioned ultimateknicks.com. I used to go there all the time. And we actually went to freaking Montreal to watch the Knicks play Toronto. I'm quite sure you guys heard that story a couple times already. But we used to do that. You meet friends and you guys become like buddies off of meeting online and stuff. So I think that shit is great. You know what I'm saying? Definitely great. But a lot of the stuff that's happening on the internet and stuff like that, according with the microwave stuff, and just calling people bitches and stuff like that. Like you know what I'm saying. There's no repercussion. Some people it's like a fight on site if you start calling people names out the blue like that. You know what I'm saying? And plus, some of these guys I've seen them call each other calling all kind of names, and then they go meet each other in person, and I love you, bro. I love you, bro. You know what I'm saying? So, I rather just tell a motherfucker, meet me at Nathan's. And that way you just know what time it is. You know what I'm saying? If you don't like it, you're not gonna do nothing about it. All right, fine. You know what I'm saying? But I'd rather just cut the middleman, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, let's just talk basketball. If you're not gonna talk basketball, then let's go to Nathan's. You know what I mean? Shout out to Pressure. He says great content. So I don't know if this is my mom or this is a cousin of mine or maybe like a what do you call burner account for somebody. Maybe that's Sim right there. Sim's burner account saying great content, man. So definitely appreciate it. So we got 8 minutes left in this podcast, man. So I'm just doing an hour, diehard hour, man. This is just E-Rule today. Today E-Rule's ranting. You know what I mean? E-Rule's just doing his thing, ranting, talking about the Knicks and stuff. So like I said, I would like to talk to you guys. If anybody wants to pop in and say something, shout out to Mike Doc. Mike. Whatever, on here. He got on 2 episodes ago. He gave some good takes and stuff. I didn't want to interrupt him. Just let him say what he was saying because he was saying good stuff, man. So a lot of times I like to hear people talk, man. Sometimes I even watch my own podcast back just so I can, because you don't really recognize your own voice. So I can hear myself talking back to me and I don't really register it as me. So I be enjoying the shit that I'm saying sometimes. You know what I mean? So I enjoy what you guys have to say. I enjoy watching other people, certain people, talking, whatever, man. So it's all good. Thank you for guys like Kareem and stuff that's helping me out here in the chat. Definitely appreciate it. Guys like Kareem has been holding me down for a long time, bro. You know what I'm saying? Just hopping in here, doing my while I'm doing my thing. He says here, I want to know why Mitch played against the Raptors and not against OKC. That's another thing too. They pick and choose. So sometimes they'll let them do the first game. They'll play the first game and they give them the rest in the second game. But at the same time, was Mitch? The game was close, so maybe Mitch could have made a difference as far as helping out on the interior defense and stuff like that. But Mitchell Robinson, he's becoming more of a lob threat because of guys like Jose Alvarado, OG and stuff like that. Guys are keeping an eye on him now. Shout out to Mike Brown. Mike Brown's trying, to get everybody involved. It's hard when you have a lot of talent on the team. Sometimes guys, you forget about guys sometimes, but it's also not a video game, so the game is of improvisation. So we can only get stuff, based on what the defense gives us. You know what I'm saying? So, so that's another thing. So, Mitchell Robinson, for those that have been following me online, that I don't like Mitchell Robinson. He made a comment recently talking something about some internet stuff. He's always saying some sketchy, like junior high school stuff. That's one of the reasons why I don't like him. Another reason why I don't like him because people talk him up too much, as if he's Patrick Ewing. This is Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing is right here. You know what I'm saying? That's Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing used to get 25 and 20 some nights, against Shaq, and against David Robinson. He used to battle Hakeem Olajuwon. He used to get major numbers against elite players. Mitchell Robinson is not even averaging 2 blocks per game this year. He's not even averaging a block a game. I know he's coming off the bench and stuff, man. But for somebody that's supposed to be the greatest center of all time, so this is not the Mitchell Robinson show. But like I said, I would like to do a Mitchell Robinson show. Just to explain myself a little bit more with this whole situation, and just add who the new Mitchell Robinson is. So tune in for that. Maybe I'll do that on my channel, on the Dire Knicks channel. And I'll save those type of conversations for my channel, and use these open forum kind of things here for the Ultimate Knicks, not Ultimate Knicks, the Nothing But Knicks channel. You know what I'm saying? So tune in for that, man. So all right. So he says, say eye for an eye. We got to give back to those teams playing dirty, man. I'm with it. Shout out to Lettuce there. Lettuce is here holding me down. Shout out also to the hot dog stand, my man, Harlem CEO in the place. Yeah, man. So these are my guys. Definitely appreciate you guys coming in and stuff. Yeah, so did I miss something? I know I had some other talking points I wanted to get into here. Yeah, so this is against the better teams in the NBA. So the Knicks are 14-9 against the top six teams in each conference. I'm not sure if that's correct. 15-9 if you include the game that disappears from the schedule. So the games that disappear from the schedule, you want to say the cup games, right? He said they're 5-2 against the best in the West and 9-7 against the top six teams in Eastern Conference. You know what I'm saying? So can we fix this? That's what the regular season is about. Shout out to LeBron James. He's like leading the pack about shortening the NBA season, having more downtime and that type of stuff. Because we're just playing at a higher pace and stuff. The Achilles injuries, that's not because of pace, Achilles injuries. Achilles injuries is overuse injuries. Right now both of my Achilles are on fire. Is because I'm overweight. That's number one, and I'm doing a lot of stuff, walking back and forth in work boots, so my Achilles are on fire. So just to use that as an example, these NBA players, they do a lot of plyometrics and they're working out and they're in game shape all year long. All they do is play basketball. They don't do anything else. Shout out to football where guys will be doing ballet in the summer just to change the pace. A lot of NBA players go to boxing as a change of pace, just to use different muscles, develop your body a different way, rather than to just grinding it out all year playing basketball, So that's why these guys keep getting Achilles injuries, man, because you want to talk about Kevin Durant. Durant is in New York at the Lifetime time gym, shooting around and playing, ones and constantly working on his game. I'm saying all year round. These guys are just playing like that all year round, man. So when did these guys get a break? Back in the days, I'm going to use Raymond Felton as an example. Fat Felton would just be down south at his house, barbecuing all summer, So, and then he'll show up to the Knicks training camp out of shape, and he got to get himself in shape during training camp. You know what I'm saying? So that's how guys used to do it back in the days. That's why if you notice certain NBA players now are more cut and they just carrying a lot of muscle and stuff because they've been working out all year. That's why they're able to keep that Adonis figure. Basketball players back in the days that's why they always saying guys look like plumbers and stuff. They didn't have no muscles, no definition, because guys weren't constantly playing basketball. Or they were just playing basketball. They weren't, anyway. I just got distracted here because somebody just popped in. So somebody popped in. So this guy kind of looks like me. He's like me from an alternate universe. This is my man Kareem Grant here. What's good, Kareem? What's going on, man?
What's going on, bro? What's going on?
Chilling, man. Good to hear your voice. Good to see you moving around like
Same
not
here.
just an avatar,
Yeah. I see you look good, man. You look good.
You can say that if you want, man. You know what I'm saying?
I
You're
see,
trying
I
to
see
glaze
you
me
up
up.
there. You know what I'm saying? Working out the muscles and stuff, man. I see you.
Yeah, I'm trying my best. I'm also eating a lot too, man.
I
Yeah, getting older and stuff. So what's
hear
on your
that,
mind,
man.
man? Why you popping in here trying to bother the show? What's up? We trying to
uh, well, I wanted to know how do you feel about Hart coming off the bench and have Shamit starting?
I think it's a good idea. I don't like Mikhail either, man. That's a whole nother story. I would
He's
prefer
skittish.
Shamit to start you over either one of them.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think Bridges he seems skittish sometimes, man. He irks me because he's got all that talent, but he just seems so scared, man. I don't know,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think I wouldn't mind him Bridges coming off the bench either. I mean, the Wingstop thing is yeah,
Yeah, it's overrated. It's
yeah.
more of a team concept than anything. You know,
Right.
yeah, Mikhail was supposed to have been a scorer. When we were ever going to see that, what he used to do in Brooklyn. Was that a thing, or was that, that was just a isolated thing?
I mean, he had the green light to do whatever. Who else was on the team?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, that's why I said, because I never really paid attention to him that much when he was in Phoenix.
Yeah.
But apparently it wasn't that much. I mean, he was doing over there. I mean, I don't know, but I thought that when he came to the Knicks that he was going to be this defensive scorer, along with OG, and it's like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
know everybody was busting his chops about, yeah, he don't want to get to the rim, he don't want to get hurt, he's scared, because he want to, have this Iron Man, thing about, not missing any games and all that. I get it and all, but we don't need that right now. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
We're a team full of role players, to tell you the truth, but we're not, the way that OKC plays, that they're just a little bit more nastier than we are. Our role
Yeah.
players are gentlemen. Mikal Bridges plays best when other guys around him are playing really well. Same thing with Hart. So they're kind of like in the same kind of thing. You agree with that or no?
I say yeah, but I also I think Mikel he thrives more when there's more ball movement.
Yeah.
So when you sitting there holding the ball, you know, not he's not gonna really be there for you like that. Yeah, he can shoot them corner threes, but we need more than that.
Yeah.
So
He's gonna transition, maybe cut into the basket. You might catch him. He got a couple looks the last game, but as far as shot
yeah,
creation, man, we're just not gonna get that from him.
yeah, he had a couple of flashes in the past two games. Where I was like, oh, okay, Bridges, but then he disappeared again. I was like, all right, so much
Yeah.
for the tease, the dick tease.
Yeah. He's aggravating too, man. With the dances, all the dances that he does in the beginning of the game. I'm over that shit,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
You know?
like, yo, you need to calm down, fella. You didn't do that much.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, grabbing the guy's hands and doing like this with their hands and all. I was like, what is this about, man? I thought we was over that. That's like something they used to do maybe like 5-10 years ago, and they still doing it. It's kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
man.
yeah,
Yeah, but you caught me at the end. One thing with the show, me and Sim wanted to just hit it like bam. As soon as it hits like an hour, we just whoever's
yeah,
talking, we just
yeah,
cut them off.
right,
We will cut them off right
yeah.
at that point. But we're
Yeah,
not
I
really
just
there
wanted to
yet.
pop in real quick.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Before I,
Yeah, but I ain't gonna cut you
turn
off
in.
though.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. So
Well,
when people
well,
start popping in, we'll do that.
yeah. I'll drop in next week, man. I'll drop in next week.
Yeah, whenever you feel comfortable. Sometimes I might not be saying anything, so you say, you know what? Let me go to sleep, man. This guy ain't saying nothing. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
man. I
I
see that.
appreciate you popping in, man. Always supporting in the chat and everything that you do for me, man. I definitely appreciate you.
Always, man. Much love to you, man. Much love.
All right. All right. Peace, man.
All right, man.
Yeah, so that's my man, Kareem Grant in the place. First time I seen him, man, he was across from me on the bar wearing a Die Hard Knicks shirt. Unbelievable. But anyway, we up out of here, man. Die Hard Knicks hour. This is Die Hard Hour on Nothing But Knicks show. Right now, we're on Die Hard Knicks also for the time being. Eventually, this particular segment is only going to be on Nothing But Knicks. So tune in for more content on my channel, Die Hard Knicks. I'm going to start getting some stuff together, so I'll be more consistent on my own channel. But this is Sim's thing here. So this is what we're doing here on Nothing But Knicks. Tune into Nothing But Knicks. I wish nothing but Knicks could get some more followers, man. I feel like we had a nice little wave, where Sim was rocking pretty tough. Sim had to take fall back a little bit due to personal stuff. And then I feel like people forgot about him. You know what I'm saying? He's still putting out content, meanwhile he's going through a bunch of stuff in his own life. And then I felt like during that time frame, that's when everybody started falling back and forgetting that he's here. You know what I'm saying? So I would like to help bring it back. Hopefully that's what I'm doing here. You know what I'm saying? Getting more eyes to the channel and stuff. Shout out to other content creators also that Simmons is working with. They should be putting out content on this channel as well. So anyway, without further ado, man, it's your boy Eru, Dionix Podcast. Hopefully you guys can hear Eru. Hopefully you guys can hear the soundboard, because I'm trying to get that incorporated into the show. But regardless of the fact, you can hear me. So if you can hear me, put 4 fingers to the forehead, tucking the thumb salute. Catch you guys later. It's your boy Die Hard. We out. Check out the outro, guys. Don't forget, this is the lettuce with Die Hard Hour theme song. Check you guys next week, 9 p.m. on Thursday. Peace.
There's been a change of plans, tighten up the clamps, we guarding the glass, I'm a Knickerbocker, we going man to man, no blood, no foul, sturdy in the zone, I leave it all on the line, die hard or go home, you see the body work, we shaking and baking, was down by 20, but my spirit ain't breaking, respect ain't automatic, you screaming out for the ref for a tech, you for a tech. I guard the garden, steel block swatted, bleed blue and orange, it's a die hard thing, you know nothing about it, live with the any star, 5 borough flavor, I made it rain, stole your cookies, see you later, yeah, die hard, we ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' die hard, yeah, die hard, we ain't get these scars for nothing, we gon' try hard, yeah, let us suck.